All right, you wanna just jump in?
See, I'm not saying anything because I'm a silent protagonist.
Fuck you. That's not good podcasting. I'm podcast Krampus. You're going in my sack.
Oh, no.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Backstage Gaming, Dramatics takes on your favorite games. I'm Chris.
Dylan be the person who's speaking.
And cool start. We're here to talk about games and to talk about theater and to talk about acting. And this week, got a topic that we're both very excited about. We might end up coming into things that we're like, oh, well, nope, that's its own episode. But in general, we're talking about a two-word phrase that Dylan texted me in all caps at like 10 o'clock at night, and that phrase was...
Silent. I peeked the mic.
It's okay, I can bring it down.
Protagonist. I didn't peek that time.
Good. Yeah, we're going to be talking about how games manage to be compelling even with characters as the main character who say nothing, and who sometimes get very little characterization at all, and how they achieve what characterization they do have, because that's kind of a very uniquely gamey approach to characters. Like,
yeah,
I cannot think of any movie where the main character just straight up doesn't talk.
John Wick, I think?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, few and far between, as opposed to games where it's like every other game.
especially back in the day. I really love silent protagonists, and I think they are hugely underrated. A lot of people are like, now that technology is better and people are putting more effort into writing games, we should just do away with silent protagonists altogether. Make Link talk. And I'm like, no, that defeats
They did
the
that
magic.
once.
I mean, like, yes, they did that a couple times, but,
Yeah.
you know, I'm ignoring those. So, I just want to get this out of the way real quick. As an actor, I love silent protagonists, like, me personally, because they are really cool in that, like, you can kind of take different elements of their portrayals and really kind of create your own character. And we'll go into that more later, but I just wanted to put my foot down and say that silent protagonists are great. They will never die, just like ska.
Boy, they really had us in the first half there. Okay, wow, that was very unexpected. Dylan, I am on tenterhooks because you texted me, again, in all caps, at 10:30 in the morning as I was beginning my shift at my day job, and you just said, I have a story for the podcast, and I have been dying to know what that story is ever since.
So I'm going to segue from, like, one thing into another, so if you want to get your week out, or just your life. How's life been, Chris?
I don't really have much to report.
Okay.
My store has apparently grinched away Christmas from a sizable portion of Evanston because we ran out of Christmas trees here a full fortnight before the blessed day itself. But, you know.
Okay. Yeah, that's not great.
But, like, also, who buys their Christmas tree a month in advance? Yeah.
Okay, good. I was afraid that was just me.
No, like that tree gonna die. That tree already dead. That tree gonna rot.
By the time you get to Christmas, like, there's not gonna be a tree.
I had a woman come in and demand a refund because her tree had been shedding pine needles, and it was all I could do not to say,
That's your fault, Martha.
Do.
Like,
trees do that.
Oh my goodness.
You have made it forever fall for this tree.
Like, if you bought a Christmas tree at the start of Christmas, that's your fault.
Yeah. Also, you bought a Christmas tree at the start of December from a grocery store, which means it had been cut probably a good days before you even got it. Anyway, that's
my goodness.
That has been a lot of the complaints of this past week for me, so I don't need to live vicariously through that anymore. Tell me about your story.
Okay, so it's not like a huge story, it's more like a moment in time that happened. I think I told you, but for the listeners at home, I'm currently doing a temporary holiday job at a local farmer's market. So basically, I'm packaging these different, like, gift baskets that they are selling. And so, you know, I come into work today, and I walk in and I'm talking to my manager or my supervisor. I don't know what his actual position is, but
the boss.
He's the person who's calling the shots for me. And so he's basically like, yeah, so I'm not really feeling too hot today, so, it should be a pretty lax day. I'm not going to be giving too many orders, like, it's just, we're going to be taking it easy today. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's awesome. And I take a few steps, and the first thing I hear is, and, I'm instantly like...
I didn't know where this was going, but that's not where I thought it was.
Yeah, so I turn around and this dude is like vomiting into a trash can for at least a solid minute.
It was all my hopes and my prayers were you were gonna say you turned around and he was just yucking it into a gift basket. And then you just put a little bow on it and it's done.
Yeah. So
oh no.
Yeah, he is like, it was bad, dude. Like oh man, and this was the second I got there. I literally took my jacket off, walked maybe 4 or 5 steps, and then I just hear my supervisor vomiting into a trash can.
Oh, no.
And so, my first thoughts are like, oh my god, does he have the flu? Shit, I still haven't gotten my flu shot. Oh, this is terrible. I'm gonna get the flu. I'm freaking out about this. But, later he elaborates, like, I'm sorry, something didn't agree with me. And so, unfortunately, my first thought, I didn't say this out loud, but my first thought was, yeah, man, that Sonic movie poster's pretty rough.
And I'm so glad you found a way to segue because my friends
I've been thinking about this all day.
Across the internet. My friends in Cyberland, if you have not seen the poster for the new Sonic the Hedgehog live-action film, I have it open on my computer because I've just been staring in awe at this lad. So we talked about this movie a few episodes ago, just sort of in passing as a thing that exists.
I think that was episode 2, actually.
And, I knew from the word go that this was going to be a mess.
Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot to be confident about.
I was not ready. So the poster... honestly, do yourself a favor and use whatever electronic device is most handy and just Google, Sonic movie poster. Okay, before you look up the Sonic poster, either conjure in your mind an image of everyone's favorite blue hedgehog, your friend and mine, Sonic. If you've never played a Sonic the Hedgehog game, if you're only passingly familiar with the character, Google it. Just get, picture him. He's blue. He's got a big cocky grin.
He's got kind of Mickey Mouse eyes or something like that.
Yeah, very generously, you would consider him a hedgehog. His head is roughly twice the size of his whole torso. He has
the spirit of a hedgehog.
Yeah, but he's got kind of rubber hose animation-esque arms and legs where they're very thin and not particularly formed. Big honkin' hands, big honkin' feet. Classic, animation, clear silhouette, not meant to be realistic. This poster, my friends.
Oh boy. I actually need to look it up again, because I blocked a lot of it out.
Item 1. So the poster is all lit from behind.
Oh yeah, that's bad.
Figure. Yeah.
That's not good.
You really can't make out much in the way of detailing, because it's all very lit from behind, very dark. So all you're really getting is a silhouette, and he's kind of crouching.
Oh no, baby!
Item 1, there's a lot of fur. There's a lot of fur. Hedgehogs, not particularly furry. They're spiny, not particularly furry, and especially not furry on their limbs, which, let me tell you, this good boy is.
Oh, man.
There's also something very off where, he's still got the giant, doofy, cartoony hedgehog head, but then his body just looks like they were like, hey, office intern, put on this one-piece, Under Armour tracksuit, roll around in some honey, and then go live with some long-haired Siamese cats for a while. And, get that fur action all over your otherwise weirdly toned and anatomically correct human body.
Oh my god, it's terrible. Do you see his, actual sneakers?
Oh yeah, his big doofy clown shoes that are, the size of his whole torso. This is a mess. And this is the first thing I noticed. If you look at this image, on his... what I will generously call a face.
Yeah.
Camera right. so the right side of the image as you're looking at it, there's a little like protrusion that is catching the light.
Yep.
Which I can only assume is his eye,
beady
but
eye.
it is clearly like coming out from the silhouette
got, like,
of his
eyes.
face. So he must have
He's got like actual hedgehog eyes.
Yes, but like more. Like if this silhouette is to be believed, his eye extends a full like inch out of his head in profile.
Yeah, that is the implication.
Wild, my guys. I mean, like, also, I think my favorite part about the whole poster is the tagline at the top that says, "From the producer of The Fast and the Furious." They're like, who do we get to adapt our video game franchise? I know. He make thing go vroom.
You know what? I wouldn't mind that for an F-Zero movie. But F-Zero's dead.
I wouldn't either. Like, but also then the image they chose is they just like, they were like, all right, guys, all right, writer's room at Paramount Pictures, major movie studio. How are we going to adapt this very cartoony video game character into our ostensibly live-action film? And some guy in the corner raised their hands, and they were like, yes, Jeremy? And Jeremy said, my son has a friend on the track team, and we could have him roll around in syrup and hair. And everyone at Paramount Pictures said yes. And now we have this image to haunt my nightmares.
They applauded, even.
They applauded. They said yes. Like, that's the other thing.
You know
that's
the best thing about this, though? Sega had misgivings about this design.
Yes.
Like,
famously conservative and defensive of their IP, Sega.
Yeah, they were kind of like, I don't know about this. Sega, 10 years ago, we had Sonic kiss a human girl. Like, Sega doesn't have a surname.
Years. That was 10 years. That was 10
that was
full
12
Christian years ago.
That was 12 years ago.
That was 12. I need to go lie down and put some ice packs on my back.
No, we got to finish the episode. We just getting started, Chris.
I need to leave this horrifying image. I could talk about this for the full runtime of our show.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
But we're talking about Silent Protagonists, and Sonic is actually a really good kind of thing to look at as far as what games can do with Silent Protagonists, because in his first 3 games, he was silent. He did not speak. He never had any dialogue, written or verbal. But he's a really cool thing to look at because, you know, you think about that original design, how cartoony it was. Sonic has one of the most expressive sprites, especially considering how early on he came onto the scene.
Literally, the first thing you see when you turn on the game is Sonic poking his head out, wagging his finger at you, and winking with a smirk.
Yup. And then you get into the game, and he's got all these great, like, his idle animation. He, like, puts his hands on his hips and looks at the camera and taps his toe. Like, are you really making me wait for you?
Are we gonna go? Or are we just gonna...
He's a great example of a character where you learn a ton about him entirely through the way that he is, like, physically embodying the space. And that's really cool, and that's something that, like, as actors, we have to think about a lot because, you know, even if you're the main character in a show or movie or play or whatever, statistically, you're probably not actually speaking more than, like, at absolute most about 50% of the time. And so you've got to be in a space, on camera, in shot, on stage, you know, being believable and, like, still staying, you know, a part of this world that you're trying to create while not really having anything necessarily to do. And let me tell you, that's not
It's not easy.
Especially
if you watch, like, Black Dynamite, like, there will be... Black Dynamite is, like, intentionally, like... It is a meta movie where, like, the actors are pretending to be actors, pretending to be characters in this movie.
Great fucking
and, like,
film.
they will constantly do takes to camera and be like, what do I do right now? What? Like, they'll read stage directions out loud. It's great.
Yeah, let me tell you, I worked for a couple years here in Chicago as a teaching artist. I worked in, like, primarily with groups of kids that were anywhere from kindergarten to, like, 4th grade. And a lot of it was improv, but I worked with a couple of camp programs where, like, the goal was, like, we're going to put on a play, and we're going to make it as professional as we can make it. Not, like, pushing the kids unreasonably, but, like, challenging the kids to stretch themselves and to, like, grow into, you know, professional performers, more or less. And it was incredible just watching, like, a kid who is, you know, attentive and very good and like has clearly been doing this kind of, you know, small scale theater stuff for a while, and they get up there and they do their lines, and they do their lines very well, and then it's another character's chance to talk, and they're just like sitting there picking their nose and like staring at a butterfly on the ceiling, and like it just drop any sense of being engaged and being a part of the world on a dime. And then, you know, their next line comes up and they're like, haha, I'm ready. Like,
speaking of dropping real quick, Chris, I hate to interrupt your example right now, but I'm on our drive, and I see that there is just an untitled document that is just in bold, Arial, 72-point format. Vinegar! 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 Like, what is going on here?
Well, for one thing, I'm crying. Yeah, I was at work, and I needed to label a new spray bottle as being full of vinegar because we're going to use it to, like, wipe down and, like, decalcify the water dispenser in our seating area.
Okay.
But for some reason, Microsoft Word would not print.
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck it, I'll do it in Google Drive. And apparently I was logged into the Backstage Gaming email address, and I didn't think about the consequences of my actions.
Okay, I was just wondering.
But yeah, Sonic and a lot of those old, you know, 2D sprite-based silent protagonists, people like Mario in various games, all that you had to build a character off of was their physicality. Like, maybe a little bit of a blurb in the, like, instruction manual for those old NES games. But, like, Sonic was all sass because that was how they animated him. And then eventually when they gave him a voice, when he started to speak in the 3D games, maybe in the cartoons before that, I don't remember how the timeline works out.
Yeah.
Either way,
I mean, the cartoons were in the early 90s, and then there were like 3 of them, and then we got to the Dreamcast games.
But, like, I guarantee you, when they were writing those scripts for when they finally gave Sonic a voice, they were looking back at those original sprites and thinking, like, okay, how do we write this character? How do we make
capture this ratitude and put it into Word?
How do we let people know that this cat does what Nintendo don't?
And then, unfortunately, by doing that, they dated the character extremely hard, but whatever, it's fine.
It ain't good. Anyway,
I still love Sonic, but...
Oh, yeah. Not hairy meat man Sonic, but, you know, oh boy.
Maybe that's just Ben Schwartz in a tracksuit.
That he rolled around in, like, a cat pit.
In honey and cat hair, yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of where we're coming at. We're going to look at some games that we like with silent protagonists and talk about how those characters are given character and what they do narratively with this handicap of a silent protagonist. So, Dylan, you had some that you wanted to get to right off the bat. Why don't you jump in?
Well, you and I both love the Mario RPGs.
It's true. I love those games so much.
So I've been playing through Super Mario RPG with a friend whenever I'm back home, and I really should get started on that again. But, like, one of my favorite things about Mario in Super Mario RPG specifically is that when he's telling a story, he will run back and forth frantically, and, like, you know, maybe there's an animation of him raising his arms, but then sometimes he turns into the subject he's talking about, like he's Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Wait, that's rad.
Yeah, it's great. It's like,
I haven't played Super Mario RPG in years.
It's really good. You should definitely check it out. But it's this really nice little touch that, like, even though Mario never speaks, you know, like, he has a voice now, but, like, it's only to go, like, woohoo, or, you know, like, something of the like.
Mamma mia.
Yeah, like, little one-off, I'm saying something to fill in the fact that I have no real personality.
I have no mouth and I must woohoo!
That was, like, a really cool little way they took that character and gave him something more.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of times when you run into a silent protagonist, it's not that they didn't want, it's not just that they couldn't give it a voice, because, like, you know, text boxes have existed for as long as there have been games. There's always been ways to make characters talk somehow.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, especially with protagonists, there's this idea, and you see this a lot in RPGs, and I'm hoping that this is sort of lobbing the ball to you, because I know what one of the things you wanted to talk about is. a lot of the times that is to enhance this feeling of like you, the player, being in the game. The idea being sort of if the character talks and they're saying something that is not how you would have been playing the character, especially in games with lots of like choice points and decision moments, that's taking away from sort of that fantasy and that promise that the game is making that like this is your version of the character. Not always what they're doing, but that is sort of another take on it, and one of those sort of choices that's being made to deliver on a particular kind of story.
Yeah. So before I get to the main series that I want to talk about, I want to brush on Zelda real quick, just because we were just talking about Mario, and Link also has a lot of physicality to him, particularly once we jump to 3D.
Oh, it's so good.
So, Chris, actually, before I go into this, Zelda on the Nintendo 64, like both Majora's Mask and Zelda Ocarina of Time, what is your read on the Link in those games?
If I had to pick like a single adjective for it, I would say determined.
Okay.
Like all of the art for N64 Link, you know, he's got all of these very angular features. A lot of that art is very like him leaning in, him going hard. And even like his animations tend very much towards like he's got a lot of forward momentum going in basically everything he does. And I think that
okay.
Yeah, that's always been kind of my read.
I think determined is a good thing to describe him. I think if I could throw in another word to describe him, I would go with awkward.
This is also fair.
Yeah. So the first thing we see Link doing is he is suffering through a nightmare, so he's just kind of in his bed, trembling.
Yep.
And, you know, when Navi, the game's mentor...
Navigator.
No, I mean, yeah, but I'm trying to think of, like, her relation to Link. The closest thing he really has to a guardian...
She's his Tinkerbell.
Yeah, okay,
if he's Peter Pan, Navi is his Tinkerbell. Navi was also Nintendo being like, hey gamers, here's how you operate a camera in 3D space because you've never had to do this before. But
what if I incorporated that into his character?
Yeah, they used it character-wise, which is a super cool decision they made.
You know, you have Link. He's kind of like this geeky kid, at least in my view, because, you know, the first thing we see him do is he's having a nightmare. Navi comes to wake him up, and he refuses to leave the bed. There are other scenes later in the game where, like, there's a princess who's flirting with him, and he just does not know how to respond to that. But, you know, so those are, like, the physical things. And then, like, another thing I like to look at with silent protagonists is how does the world around him react to his presence?
Yep.
And you know, when you explore the first area, Link's hometown, Link's home village, a lot of, you know, it's established that one of the NPCs bullies him. A lot of the NPCs are indifferent to him. And, you know, he finally has this fairy guardian, his Tinkerbell. Everybody in his village is supposed to have one, but he was born without one. But now that he has one, people are a lot more willing to talk to him. In fact, I was thinking about this earlier today, and I kind of came to a discovery, like, in the Nintendo 64 Zelda games, Navi and Tattle, that's not important, the fairy companion Link has enables him to focus on things and to talk to people from a distance. And I always wondered, like, what if that is Navi giving Link the confidence to talk to people? Or, like, you know, like, as a way of, like, kind of a coach? A social coach, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I want to jump in really quick, just for a quick interjection, because this gets to something that I've always found very helpful. Figuring out sort of character when you're playing a role is very much a process, and it's very much something that, like, it's equal parts your preparation and, you know, working with the other people involved. But one of the things that I've always found very helpful, I don't remember where I learned this from, but I love it. Every time I'm prepping for a new role, I will read the script 4 times. I read it once just to get the story so that I have that in my head. And then I read it 3 times just writing down things about my character that I notice, and I read it once just looking for things that the character says about themselves, once looking for things that other people say about the character when they're around, and once looking for things that other characters say about that character when they're not around. Because that helps give you, like, a very solid idea of, like, at the very least, what opinions about this person are. And that's kind of what you get with a silent protagonist a lot. You see how people are interacting with them without getting anything from them.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. You always find a way to say what I'm getting at and making it more direct. But
It's what I'm here for.
Hey, there you are. Heavens to Murgatroyd.
The obligatory Snagglepuss cameo of the episode.
Yeah, always. I can't believe this is a running gag now.
You're welcome.
I guess it's always funny to me when people are like, all links are the same, when, like, you know, in my mind, because of like all these different like little clues and subtextual things, or in like how Nintendo has written the world around Link, I always am able to get like some sort of impression of Link. So to contrast the Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask to other Links, like in Twilight Princess, the Link in that one, he's the oldest kid in the village. All of the kids look to him as like the leader, and not only that, but all the adults in this village, like, he is the most helpful person in the entire village. Like, he is able to do all of the errands. He's the person everyone goes to for their problems.
He's the golden boy.
He is the golden boy, which is the complete opposite of the Link in Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
To take that a step further, you got the Link in Skyward Sword, who all the adults love him. Like, everyone in, like, power loves him. His peers fucking hate him.
Yup.
Like, the first thing that happens in that game is a bunch of teenagers Link's age pull a prank on him. And, like, they hide his... In Skyward Sword, they ride birds as their steeds. So they lock his bird up and try to get him to fail this exam. I don't want to go too much into detail, but I hope you get the basic...
So they can smooch on Zelda.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to punk Link, and you know what? I agree with them. That Link is a punk.
Yeah, he ain't my favorite.
Everything gets handed to him in that game, and I'm done ranting. Anywho.
And then you've also got, like, the
I'm
Link
really passionate about Link, you guys.
It's fair, I am too. Then you get the Link in, like, Wind Waker, that is a game where...
He's going from Hunter x Hunter.
Wait, what?
He's like very much a shonen protagonist.
Very much a shonen protagonist, but also, like, very driven by family. Like, the inciting incident in that game is you have to save your sister.
Yeah.
And then there is a pretty major side questy thing that you can do later on in the game where you have to help your grandma. And, like, a lot of that game is bound up in, like, that Link is someone who cares first and foremost about, like, helping his family and helping his friends. And you get that through the actions that he takes and also the way people around him interact with him. You also get the sense that he's very naive because he's young, but also, like, all these pirates are just like, oh, look at this little kid.
Yeah, like, they all treat him super condescendingly. I think when his sister gets kidnapped, he's so driven to run after the giant bird that, like, swooped in and picked her up that, like, he's not thinking about the fact that he's about to run off a cliff.
And he does run off a cliff, and the pirates have to save his ass.
Yeah, like
you get. That's a great scene. That is a really great scene.
It is
tells
a very
you so much about this character.
Yeah,
I love it.
We're talking over each other, and I knew this would happen because I love silent protagonists. I guess we went through Zelda a little faster than I expected.
It's okay. We got him the bit bat bop. We hit the 1, 2, 3. Zelda's a really cool series to look at. Like, if this is something that you find interesting, let us know by telling us on Twitter or messaging us via our website, and we can maybe do more episodes about stuff like this.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Another use of silent protagonists. Sometimes it is useful when you want to, like, give the player the sense of, like, greater immersion in the game. Sometimes it's useful just because, like, that's the way that you want to tell your story. There's a game that I am a huge fan of called Dishonored. It's a few years old now. But yes, Dishonored is a stealth game primarily. It is a sneaky, jumpy, climby, stabby if you want to game. It is made by a bunch of people who made a bunch of other games that I like. I was immediately going to be really into Dishonored because it's a stealth game, which is one of my favorite genres, and it's made by a combination of people who worked on the Half-Life games, which are among my favorite games, and Thief the Dark Project, which is maybe my favorite game. And so I was, I was going to be into this. But one of the things that is so cool about Dishonored, it's a story of, well, it's kind of there in the title. You are a character who is dishonored. Your job is to be this bodyguard to an empress, and then she dies and you're framed for it, which, don't look too good on the curriculum vitae. And so you have to track down and like stop this coup against your city. But one of the things they did that's so cool is you can play the entire game without killing anyone, or you can make it a bloodbath. And in addition to, like, there's RPG elements where, like, you can upgrade different powers that will make you better at sneaking or better at fighting or whatever. But there's also, like, most of the missions revolve around, like, you have to get into a place where you should not be and eliminate somebody. And you can do that through killing them, or you can do it through, like, taking them out of the picture. I want to make it clear, that is not the good option. One very notable example is you can either kill this pair of, like, Lord brothers who are part of the conspiracy, or you can do a favor for a crime boss who will have them abducted, burned beyond recognition, have their tongues cut out, and sell them into slavery. So, like, sometimes
You're a hero.
sometimes killing is not the worst option. But the main character of this game, Corvo Atano, is a silent protagonist, which in a game like this feels like a really cool and very active choice on the part of the developers, because not only is it like letting you roleplay more by letting you decide the kind of character that Corvo's going to be for yourself, that's also what the entire game is about. You are deciding whether your version of Corvo on this playthrough is trying to do things and make things right for as many people as possible while hurting as few people as possible, or if you're very ends justify the means and you're willing to cut a swath through the city to do what you need to do. Down to the point where, and like, you know, games like this are hit or miss, the whole like binary moral choice thing.
I have really an example I'm gonna throw out, but
yeah,
continue.
I think Dishonored does it better than most because it never tries to sugarcoat it and make it out that like what you're doing is to these people is good, which I think is, you know, more nuanced than most games with this kind of decision making give it. But you do get this very interesting, like, the world will change in lots of very subtle ways that I really like, where like if you're Corvo McStabby, the little girl, daughter of the Empress, who you are trying to protect through all of this, like, as she's in, you know, the safe house where you're keeping her, she's, like, doodling pictures and stuff, and she'll draw a picture of you in your scary mask. If you're doing Corvo McHugs, and you're, like, knocking all the guards out and leaving flowers for the hungry people, she draws a picture of you without your mask, and it says Daddy. And, like, one, teaching you something more about this character that you're playing in the world, but also, like, that's a cool way of, again, you're learning about the character that you are being through the actions of other people towards them. But yeah, that's kind of my take on Dishonored. I just think it's really cool. I like those kinds of games where the fact that you are silent plays into the fact that you are getting to direct the narrative and direct the kind of story you want to tell in a more active way, you know, even as constrained as those always actually are. And I think that it's easier and also more elegant to do that through a silent protagonist than by giving dialogue options, you know?
I was about to say, I was going to contrast this with a game like the first Red Dead Redemption, mainly because I don't know too much about the second Red Dead Redemption, still haven't played it, probably will when the price drops, maybe.
Yeah, I'd like to. It looks cool. I love the first Red Dead.
Yeah. But anyway, like, I remember there was some reviewer who was like, I really like John Marsden. I think that was his name. I believe that was his name.
I think, yeah, that's his name.
I like John Marsden as a character. However, when I play the Renegade John Marsden, nothing feels like it really changes, and John Marsden still feels like a decent person in all of his cutscenes. And so, like, even like as your notoriety goes up and like the in-game world reacts to you like you're a huge threat, nothing about that actually changes the story.
Yeah, sometimes that silent protagonist angle is just a more elegant solution because it's fewer things to have to change.
Yeah. You do have like your Mass Effects where like the dialogue will change, and you know, Commander Shepard might slightly change their voice. Or, you know, there's also Fallout where your dialogue options do change, I believe, and if they don't change, at the very least, you know, the blatantly evil, if you're going the blatantly evil route, all of your dialogue options will be blatantly evil.
But even then, like, I don't know, as much as I like the Mass Effect series, I think that there's...
Oh no, I still think there's elegance to having it just like be Corvo, the silent protagonist.
Yeah, in hammering out, even if you're giving, like, good and plausible and well voice-acted lines for each of the options, just leaving it open-ended item 1 saves you on work and saves you on voice acting budget as much as it hurts me, a voice actor, to say those words. But it also just, like, I think that it's okay to leave some things up to the audience. I think that audiences will help fill in blanks better sometimes than the creatives can. But you had another series that you wanted to talk about, and that I'm excited to hear you talk about because you know way more about it than I do, even though I think these games are cool.
Yes, let's talk about Dragon Quest. No, okay. I did want to talk about, like, one Dragon Quest game, but we'll talk about Persona first because that's the big thing. So, first of all, this entire episode was inspired by the amount of hype generated from Joker, the main character of Persona 5, being announced in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And so, I just kind of got to thinking, like, this is a character that is beloved, despite the fact that he doesn't really have any dialogue. He has dialogue options, and there's an adaptation of Persona 5 in which Joker is his own character with his own agency that I haven't seen. But, obviously the first impression is the strongest, and so, when people got really excited about this character's appearance in Smash, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I guess let's start with, like, what Persona is for people who haven't played it.
Yes, probably good.
So Persona is a spin-off of a larger series. That's not important. What is important is that starting with Persona 3, the Persona games have been all about we talked a little bit about this in the first episode.
We introduced this concept in the episode where we talked about
I thought it was the first episode.
I forget things as soon as we're done saying them. We talked about this a little bit before, but a quick rundown one more time in case this is your first time listening to us.
So the Persona games are, you play as a high school student who, by day, you are just an ordinary high school student, but by night you are secretly blank because it changes from game to game. In the first game, you are part of an elite organization that is exploring this weird, kind of extra-dimensional tower that spawns at midnight at your school. In the fourth game, you are a bunch of investigators who have to save people who have been kidnapped. And in the fifth game, you are for all intents and purposes, you're kind of a crack team of superhero-ish rogues. You steal treasures and use it to reform people who have done wrong.
You're Psychic Ocean's 11.
Yeah, essentially. Thank you. And I lost my train of thought just now.
George Clooney has that effect on me, too.
Yeah. Ooh, he's a dreamboat, really.
That silver fox.
So anyway, you play a mild-mannered student in all of these games, and some of them are slightly they all have like slight variations on their characters. So I'll start with the third game and then just kind of make my way over to 5. Yeah. And in Persona 3, you really kind of play as Persona 3 is like very story heavy, and so your character has like a very hard established backstory. There was an incident, and your parents die as a result of this incident, so you've just kind of been going from like foster home to institution, like you've just kind of like gone from one place to the other, and so now you end up at a boarding school. And so what's interesting about the main character of Persona 3 is that, like, a lot of people call him emo. He has like this very somber demeanor about him. He's also got like the peaked mid-2000s like emo Tobey Maguire Spider-Man haircut going on. But like it's much less that he's emo and more that like you get a feeling that he's on edge quite a bit. Especially near the beginning of the game, when the party is considering having you join their forces. They're kind of talking around the issue, or like, like, should we really be like getting him in on this? Like, he might not want to do this. A lot of the dialogue he has can be seen as like flippant or non-committal. And what's cool about that is that because a huge part of the Persona games are the fact that you kind of have to you are socializing with various NPCs who will give you benefits that will enable you to become stronger. in this game, it frames it as such that you are doing this despite yourself. Like, the only thing you really want to do is keep to yourself, but because you are fighting with these people to save the world, and because this weird person in this extra-dimensional room told you so, you're like, what the hell, I'll go around town, find random strangers, and just try to be a friend to them.
And in doing so, it engenders a character arc.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you are a silent protagonist with a character arc, and that is really cool. You know, the next game, Persona 4, it has less of a story. It's more like a slice of life. It's the Seinfeld of JRPGs. It's a game about nothing. No, but Persona 4 likes to revel in its mundanity. So there's ostensibly a murder mystery going on, but like the game doesn't really concern itself with that. Most of the game is you just kind of hanging out with your friends, and then something bad happens and you do something to fix it, and you go back to hanging out with your friends. And
this is fascinating to me because I have not played Persona 4, but I am aware that Persona 4 is maybe one of the like most beloved JRPGs of all time.
Yeah.
Like, between Persona 4 and Persona 5, there are like probably a good half dozen games based in the world established by Persona 4 and featuring the cast of characters from Persona 4.
So here's the thing. The first thing is, like, Persona 4 took, like, a lot of the things Persona 3 established and smoothed out the wrinkles and just kind of made it a more streamlined experience in general. But on top of that, I think the reason why the story and these characters have endured so much and why they have been so popular up until the release of Persona 5, nearly a decade later, is because, you know, it is very mundane. Like, you are living out the fantasy of a high school student, hanging out with, like, friends and tutoring younger students and just being, like, a pillar of the community. And
so you're Crunk.
You're Crunk. Yeah, no, exactly. And so... Sorry.
Now I want an all-Crunk JRPG.
Legit, you can make lunch and share it with a friend the next day. Like, you are a cook, you are a caretaker, you're Crunk.
I love it. I love it so much.
Oh my god, you have made this game even more magical to me somehow. But yeah, so because of that, your character, like, he is the most mild-mannered. Later games and adaptations kind of make him out to be like this charismatic god of a man. Like the cover of one of the fighting games based on Persona 4 has you on the cover and you're shirtless and you're like ripped and jacked and you're in the original game you're like a pretty spindly
from needing
guy.
All that dough to bring lunch for my friends.
But like, you know, he's known in the fandom as this swag master.
I roll that sushi tight.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, no.
I'm just apologizing for me.
Okay, good. You should apologize.
Savage.
I'm trying to talk.
All right, everybody,
over
thanks
here.
for joining us for the last episode of Backstage Gaming. I have to go dig my own grave.
Oh, stop. But yeah, no. So the main character of Persona 4, you know, he's like not really like he's like a pretty spindly guy, but like he has kind of earned this reputation because like, you know, he is just, his character is portrayed as someone who is just generally pleasant. He is the sort of person, I know that's not an acting thing we should do, but I'm not acting right now. He is the sort of person who, he will just talk to you if you look like you're having a bad day. And because he wants to, not because some weird person in extra-dimensional space told you to.
Yeah.
And this is also kind of reinforced by the fact that unlike the main character of Persona 3, who's in a boarding school, you are living at home with your cousin and your uncle, and they are amazing. Like, everything around you in Persona 4 is pleasant as hell.
I also want to take a moment to just point out, because this kind of, to bring in some theater terms that we've used before and just keep, you know, pounding those into your head.
Oh, kinky.
I know. These are two characters, Persona 3 and Persona 4, who, for large portions of the game, are taking the same actions, going out and talking to people and, you know, socializing. But because of the given circumstances that are placed upon them, those things that happen beforehand that inform what's going on. You know, Persona 3's main characters, I'm trying to make sure I have all my possessives. Persona 3's main characters, given circumstances, are a series of unfortunate events. Whereas Persona 4's main characters, given circumstances, are what Dylan was just saying. He lives in a very pleasant life with very pleasant people and is just sort of a happy dude.
Yeah, he really doesn't have any backstory. All you know about him before the start of the game is he used to live in the city, and now he's living in the country with his uncle and his cousin. And you don't even know why he's not living with his parents or anything. Like, he's a very easy self-insert, while still kind of feeling like his own person. Again, he's more of a fantasy that you are living out than an established character. So everyone has, like, a general idea of the fantasy that you are living through him, but, like, he might not exactly have his own character until people started writing for him. And so I guess we'll go to Persona 5 now, where, unlike Persona 4, where everything is pleasant, you start this game out getting arrested. And
Yep.
You piss off a politician, a very powerful politician, and you get arrested, and essentially, like, you are on probation, I think? Something like that? Or I don't remember what the exact punishment is, but, like, for whatever reason, you have to sign up in this school. There's a person who knows your parents who, like, decides to take care of you, but, like, he's also, like, really strict at first and thinks you're up to no good.
Right.
So, and, you know, when you go to school, everyone's spreading rumors about you. They all think you're going to be, like, this huge delinquent and, like, the worst. And so already, like, the deck is stacked against you. And unlike the other two games where you are socializing with all these different people in the real world because you are told to, Persona 5 treats it more like... So, again, you are a phantom thief. You're striking back out at society, and you are stealing things.
You steal men's souls and make them your slaves.
Make them your slaves, exactly. You are stealing from people in power to reform them so that society can improve, because you have been wronged by society. And so that is reflected in, for these operations that you are planning, you need stuff like weapons, and you need to be able to have diplomacy, and, you know, maybe you need some drugs. Drugs specifically used to heal you, like a potion in a fantasy RPG would. You know, you are finding all these contexts. You are finding a weapons dealer. You are finding a politician who can help you with your diplomacy, and you are finding a doctor who can hook you up with them sweet, sweet drugs. And they are all business partners that you eventually learn more about and become attached to.
Yeah.
Because
I said you're, you know, I made the joke about Psychic Ocean's 11, but, like, it's honestly true. Like, it is a group of people that you get together for the purposes of, like, pulling off these heists, pulling off these missions that you then grow to care more about as the story goes on.
Exactly.
I was, like, scrolling down my Facebook just to see if anything had popped up, and I scrolled past an ad for Atlas USA's new Persona dancing game. So somehow targeted marketing is getting to the point where it just, like, hears me saying words into my microphone.
Oh my god.
So that's frightening. I work for the Amazon Corporation. Kill me now.
Oh boy. Sorry.
End it, Papa Bezos.
Okay,
End me through your internet box.
I think the last thing is, in addition to the way the game kind of informs your character, your party members also kind of react to you. So, you know, Persona 3, you're kind of angsty, more agitated. That's a better term for that main character.
Less loaded term.
Yeah. In Persona 4, you're just, you know, you are a self-wish fulfillment fantasy, generally nice dude. The characters, the way they react to you in Persona 5, like, you are the biggest show-off. You are a well of charisma, and you know it.
It's very fun.
One of the first cutscenes is you just, like, you're running from the cops, and you jump through a window, and you just strike a pose, and you hear the hacker go, "You're such a show-off." And just like
It's
little
so
things
good.
like that. All of his dialogue options are like they are flippant, but not in the same like I don't want to talk to you way that the Persona 3 characters' responses are flippant. They're more like kind of like beating your own chest, kind of. Like it's to kind of rile everyone up. You're your own hype man, I would say.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, so Joker as his that's his code name. He is he's just a huge departure from like those characters that came before him. I guess one more thing I will say about the Persona 3 and 4 characters before I move on is that there is a very telling line of dialogue in both of those games that really hammer home the idea that like the silent protagonists have their own personalities.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a channel on TV that you can look at, and it's basically like not telemarketing, paid programming for different products and stuff. And it has a announcer who kind of gives the description for these products that you can buy. And so when you turn on the TV in Persona 4, the flavor text is like a very cheery, catchy song plays on the TV. And it's like when I played this game back when I was 14, 15, I was like, yeah, no, I love this song. This is great. But when you call the same channel in Persona 3, I learned it's something more along the lines of like a repetitive grating song is playing. And it's this really tiny thing that like you can almost overlook when you're playing these games that really kind of hammer home the fact that like there's more ways to convey character than spoken word.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention real quick a little bit about Dragon Quest. So every protagonist in Dragon Quest is a silent protagonist. And
the Dragon Quest games, for anyone who hasn't played them, are the purest distilled essence of the JRPG. They are
the original Japanese RPG.
I heard someone once refer to them as the French vanilla JRPG.
That was me.
It was you. I couldn't remember if it was you or not.
Okay. No, it was definitely me.
Yeah. Explain, maestro.
So, the French vanilla thing or the character? Okay, it's the French vanilla of JRPGs in the way that, like, there is, a lot of people think vanilla ice cream is kind of plain and boring, but, like, if you have really good vanilla ice cream, like that gourmet shit,
Is that
you start to
good.
Yeah, exactly. You really gain an appreciation for it, and you know what good vanilla ice cream is when you taste it. Dragon Quest is good vanilla ice cream. It is a very plain JRPG. It doesn't have any bells or whistles that other later series would like introduce, but it does the core game so well that it doesn't really matter. Like Dragon Quest's philosophy is like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like maybe you can add a little thing here and there, but like
refine.
We don't
more
need to
than
reinvent the
outright
wheel.
change.
Yeah.
They're very fun. I've been playing Dragon Quest X.
11.
11, thank you.
Yeah, X is an MMO.
What game have I been playing? Yeah, no, I've been playing a little bit of that recently, and it's a very fun, like, it's the equivalent of like picking up even though I've never played the game before, it feels like the equivalent of like picking up an old favorite book.
Yeah, Tim Rogers
and just reading a few pages.
Kotaku.com has described Dragon Quest as fairy tales you can play.
Yeah.
So like they are like bedtime stories almost. But anyway, so Dragon Quest, I wanted to look at two in particular. So there's Dragon Quest 3 and Dragon Quest 5. Dragon Quest 3, the story of Dragon Quest 3 is that it's as basic as you can get. Your father, Ortega, is commissioned by the king to slay the evil Dragon Lord or something like that. It's been a while. Mm-hmm. And so, he sets out to do it, and, he doesn't return. And you are a baby at this time. So, when you come of age, the king comes to your home and says, "You are the son of the legendary hero Ortega. We don't know who else to turn to. Will you follow in his footsteps?" And so, Dragon Quest III isn't a very plot-heavy game. It's more about the places you visit and the things you do than any outside external forces. But as you travel the world, you keep finding like traces of your father, like, and things that he has done, and there's almost this narrative of trying to step out of his footsteps. That's going to segue into Dragon Quest V, where you play once again you play the son of a famous warrior, in this case Pancrats, I think that's his name. And the cool thing about Dragon Quest V is that you start as a kid and you are traveling with your father as he journeys.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah, it's really cool. Dragon Quest does a lot of Dragon Quest V specifically does a lot of real cool things with its plot. But so the first dungeon is your dad goes into a cave and you follow him into the cave, but the boss is only on like the second basement floor, whereas like when you return to that dungeon as an adult, it's like a 6, 7, 8 floor dungeon. And the second dungeon is the one I really want to talk about. You go and there are kids picking on this poor cat, and you want them to leave him alone, and you go into a dungeon, like they dare you to go into a haunted house, and so you go into the haunted house, and that is the second dungeon, and you're fighting ghosts and shit, and it's really cool. And so I think what I wanted to get at with this is that one of the cool things about Dragon Quest V is that you are a silent protagonist, but you still feel like you are a kid. You are a kid doing things a kid would do. And I realize that's not quite what this episode was getting at, but like I just thought it was really cool and I wanted to talk about it because I've been thinking about it all day. So you can feel free to edit this out, Chris.
No, I think that's rad. I think that's a really cool sort of button for the episode. So yeah, I hope that this was fun for y'all to listen to. I hope it was a little bit more guided, to be generous, than last week when we were kind of just like, hey, here's our thoughts about games. But thank you once again for joining us. We hope we gave you something to think about, and we hope that maybe next time you're playing a game where your avatar don't talk too much, you'll be thinking about exactly what that means and why they might have made that choice. This has been Backstage Gaming. We are so glad that you've been listening. We're so glad that you have been enjoying us, and we would be so very grateful if you would share us and tell your friends about us and tell your family about us and tell your pastor about us and tell your rabbi about us and tell just anyone.
I don't think this is a pastor and rabbi podcast.
Hey, maybe you've got one of those cool youth pastors who swears and maybe smokes a cigarette. I know I did.
Chris?
Anyway, we really, really appreciate you listening. We really appreciate you helping us to spread the word, because that is what's going to help us to grow, and we are fueled by your attention because we're actors.
What are actors, if not robots fueled by the attention of others?
Recording this was my dinner. Please feel free to visit us at bsgpod.com. That's bsgpod.com. That's our website. It's got episodes where you can download them directly from the source when we update every Monday. It's also got bios for us. It's got a contact page if you want to reach out, and I just added a new section that I have labeled as texts. Right now, as of recording at the very least, it's just got sort of a glossary of the theater terms that we're introducing, so you have a handy cheat sheet. But I'm also going to be working on putting up some episode transcripts.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I should get on that.
No, you're fine. I should too. We're both have other jobs and can't spend 8 hours a day transcribing, but we'll get those.
I'm not gonna lie. A lot of my time has been spent playing Smash.
I can't fault you for that.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll get on that as quick as possible because accessibility is important. And yeah, Dylan, you want to hit us with those social media places that people can find our shit?
All right, social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. Our handle is at BSG_cast. You can find us on YouTube. And, if you like what we do, you can use hashtag BSGpod to, maybe get us a little attention. A little something.
I really want to start doing some kind of audience interaction section on this show. I don't know exactly what that'll look like, but I think that would be fun. And when we figure out what that will be, we'll definitely let y'all know, and we will probably use Twitter and hashtag BSGpod as sort of an avenue for getting us those audience things that we'll be working with. Thank you, as always, to our friend BioQuery for the use of our theme song, Dot Sound Radio Volume 1 Instrumentality. You can find him and the rest of his very cool, weird electronic music at soundcloud.com/BioQuery. That's soundcloud.com/BIOQUERY.
If you like our key art, that was done by our friend Brendan French. You should check out his Squarespace at brendanfrench.squarespace.com. That is BRENNEN-French.squarespace.com.
And once again, thank you, our beautiful, beautiful listeners, for giving us the food that is your ears.
Our fuel receptacles are
I'm Mike
grateful.
Tyson. Thank you for listening to Backstage Gaming. I'm Chris.
I'm Dylan.
And we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.
We love you. Don't run away, food.